got stunted this year with a late PGR, so we had some retillering and some stunting, so I didn't get as good at data and information as I would have liked. Plans for a little bit better management next year and a little bit more timely is in the works.
Great.
Yes?
Is that a sprayer issue on your last, on the bottom left?
That was where Blair stole some silage.
Oh.
so he maybe he needs to use a GPS on his with his garbage bags, and when he goes up and chops there with clippers.
He just got a little dizzy.
Yeah, so he's pulling some. That was the barley trials. So he pulled. So there's nothing out of the triticale soft wheats yet, but that was barley that got taken out for silage trials. Well, maybe we can duplicate me, Doug. Scary, eh? So these were planted on narrow row spacing, box drills. So we plant with a box drill with 3 different compartments, and we plant 3 varieties at one time. So we change the rate on each of the box drills and calibrate it, and so that we can plant whatever rate is required by the variety to get the right plants per square foot, so it's all the same. The barley's at 30 plants, the cereals and triticales, durums, wheats at 40 plants target. We do a PGR, but we were late on this one and we stunted it, sent tillers, made it super short and a little lower yielding than expected, so yeah, so you can mess that up. and treated seed. And the idea with these trials is farmers side by side to get some different information than we currently see in the marketplace. In our barley grain trials, 6-row barleys surprisingly always tolerate stress well. A couple years ago, we had that really hot heat in June where it was like 38, 39 degrees for like 3 weeks straight. The 6-row barleys survived that surprisingly well. The heads fully emerged. Now, you need moisture to make 6 rows go for grain. For forage, maybe not as critical. But the 6 rows always surprised me on how they can handle stress. They handled the stress of a late PGR better than the rest. But we didn't get a lot of good information and differentiation among all the varieties this year, so sorry. And it makes it harder for us to recommend and pick and know what varieties. And you saw other varieties in the field trials from FCDC. I pulled those out of here because those varieties aren't in the marketplace yet. There were some good varieties I'm going to keep my eye on, but didn't put it in this chart here. So the top one there is Toefield. The European style ones got impacted a bit, and they just, when you do something a little bit wrong with them, they seem to respond worse than others from what we've seen. In the CWRS, the one that surprised me was SY Manus. So in our seed production field, the field average, it was a great field. We had a great grower, Shark Sticker at Rolling Hills grew that for us. He's grown some wheat seed for us over the years, for 12 years probably. And the SY Manus was his top wheat variety, and he averaged 124 bushels an acre. Good field, good farm, everything went right. But in our yield trials, it showed really well also. So that one is kind of maybe one of our top for high management. The rest of them were all in the pack. The blend of all the varieties did okay. But really top end yield that we've found the last couple of years has kind of been Wheatland, Hockley, and we did okay in this trial as well. And Hodge was a little lower. Brandon, we always seem to find other varieties that yield more than Brandon, but I find Brandon just such a broad across the prairies variety. Usually we can find something that fits into whatever management style and area, that whether it's a Wheatland or something that is an alternative to it. But some people just still love Brandon. The durum varieties. The darker one on the right is the Vanta, and the darker one on the left is the Weyburn. And sometimes environment can influence the darkness of the heads on some of those varieties on the awns. We had 2 different succeed variety lots in there. What that was, and they yield identical, and Mike might find this interesting, but the one was had 0 bacterial blight risk on the seed lot, and the other one was a higher seed lot that we found, and I wanted to compare. So same planting rate, and there was really no difference in the end, one that was testing and one that wasn't. So I had to send that information out in the email, but I wanted to compare the two and see if we'd find a difference, and we didn't this year. So Schrader did well, but it's tall, so PGR is important for irrigation. And Stronghold, it's just an irrigation powerhouse. Donlo did well here as well. You see one shorter seed plot there. We didn't quite have enough seed to finish that one off, so we adjusted the yield accordingly to a smaller plot. But that variety was such a big seed size of triticale that we had the same amount of seed as the rest, but we had to plant at such a high rate because to get the right plant population, so we ran out. So that's why that's a little bit short there. For grain, the T293, which comes out in a year and a half or 2 years, that one looked really good. The Sunray kind of has been our main one, and compared to the soft wheats, the triticales were a little better there, so maybe they handled the stress better. Sadash seems to be the one people are going back to, and Awesome, kind of our lead two varieties. I would say Paramount has become a little less popular. We did have some triticale from Olds College F Field Crop Development Center. Pulled those ones out as well because they're not really relevant to this market until they're in the marketplace. And our hybrid fall rye and winter wheat for grain. The Tadius was the highest yielding variety out there, the triticale. Now keep in mind this is bushels per acre. Bushel weight of triticale is different, so that would come down a little bit if you were measuring in metric ton per acre or something. So it's a little deceiving on that bushel per acre, but then often people want to know the price per bushel and how does that all compare. So now it's a forage type variety, but obviously we're harvesting it for grain for seed production, and it did do really well there. We found the Kasani to be one of our top hybrid fall rye. And then the winter wheats, kind of neck and neck, the Wildfire and the Cold Front in our trial. In our seed production fields, the Cold Front, when we've had Cold Front and Wildfire, the Cold Front was outperforming by 5% over the Wildfire, it seemed like, so, which didn't show up in our yield trials. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. So net returns by crop. I always like to compare it to wheat because people often ask, well, what could I grow? Should I plant wheat or should I plant something else? What are my options? So got a chart here, and this is all available. I can email this if you don't get it. Otherwise, you've got it in your email. It's lower down in that long email we send you all the time. Keep moving stuff down into the lower part of the email and eventually deleting things. Kind of some of the hot ones would be, you know, if you grow mustard on irrigation, it's probably looking okay. Durum looks maybe okay. What else? Faba beans always seem to look okay in our charts as a percentage of other crops. And hybrid fall rye could be okay too, depending on the price. Now keep in mind, yields and prices I have up here may not be applicable to everyone. It's kind of a best guess and kind of a rough average. Corn looks actually pretty good if corn prices were to stay at $8.50, but things may have softened a little bit already since I did this a couple weeks ago. Dryland costs. Mustard looks good on dryland, of course, but make sure you're 5 years out from a canola so you don't have volunteer canola risk. What else is looking good on there? Durum looks okay. These yield numbers are tough because how does it really going to perform in your farm? And we haven't had this good of yields last year, so it's been a few tougher years. It's either feast or famine, it seems like. The lentils look okay on dryland. Thoughts for 2023? Flax, yellow flax can be priced a little more than brown, but it's a small niche market, so not everyone's a buyer, and it can be a little tougher to move. So keep that in mind. But seems like we've grown yellow flax over the past 5 to 8 years, and always have seemed to sell a reasonable amount of yellow flax for some reason. The market was really hot for a few years there, and now it's maybe slightly better than brown. And then talked about the peas. Next fall, couple new ones will be launching, so that'll be exciting for the yellow pea market. Cody's hoping he'll have some pricing on the malts program by mid-December, I'm thinking. So he's saying it'll be earlier than the past couple of years. We'll see. It uses a little less water because it's earlier, so keep that in mind if you're in a water shortage situation possibly. And use rates, some at 20 plants per square foot, some of us have gone up to 30 plants per square foot, so they always recommend a lower rate to lures out more. We find the European style barleys, the Esma, the Sirish, and actually this variety, tillers out more than we would expect, more than the Canadian varieties, so keep that in mind when you're planting. Lentils, yeah, half the farm large greens and half mustard, and we'll call it good, right? It's a smaller marketplace for greens, for sure, by far, and on lentils, if you're a pea grower, you can't use the same herbicides on lentils, so maybe a little bit more risk for weeds, so keep that in mind. One thought is if you're a little short on water, maybe instead of a faba bean, it's a lentil on irrigation. You don't want to water those very much, or a chickpea. And then you can move that water elsewhere if that's what you have to do on your farm. So something to consider in the water short districts. And same with the chickpea there. So faba beans are going to use more moisture than wheat on irrigation. So that may not be perfect in some districts this year. The low Visine, con-Visine varieties seem to command a premium in the marketplace, and there seems to be demand for them. Ben reminded me that the Fabis fix a lot more N than most pulse crops. So he was saying 1 year on the farm, there was from fall to spring soil testing, there was 100 pounds of available nitrogen from fall to spring. So that's crazy amounts. So the Fabis will fix N their whole life from start to when they're dead. And I would love to try after a fall crop or a really early crop like a winter wheat or something for grain, or the Tadius triticale, go plant a small cover crop faba bean behind. I think you would fix a lot of nitrogen. We found this fall in our faba beans, the stems were pretty green this fall. We never got any frost, we egg-loaned it. There was still a lot of green stems, and we had regrowth coming from the bottoms of the stems after harvest time. The nitrogen nodules on those plants was insane. But it wasn't consistent through the whole field. There were spots that were dead and spots that were still green stems. But then the volunteer fabas that came after that fall irrigation, that inch or whatever that was put on, then they were just loaded with nitrogen nodules. So I wonder if that's something to consider as far as an end fixer after an early crop. Mustard, watch for that herbicide carryover that risks stunting your crop. I'm told it's more sensitive versus canola for carryover herbicides in a dry season like we would have on dryland this year. Crop insurance was pretty good last year. Check where it's at this year once those numbers come out, probably closer to springtime. And edge, authority, there's not a lot you can use on this crop, so weed risk is more. And the hybrids, Blair's had a lot of bookings for the hybrid brown. The yellow, it's just getting rolling as contracts come out. Every buyer's a little different on whether they want the hybrids or not. We have winter peas planted again this year, so thanks to Nathan and team for working with me. The winter peas last year, so the picture on the right there was last year going into winter. It got pretty big. There was a big open fall last year, and we had lateral branching and tillering, and it almost went into winter too big. And then last winter was tough on fall crops. You all know that. So that winter pea plot did not survive the winter last year. Got it in again this year. The picture on the left there, Blair took for me, and that was a couple weeks ago, I believe, 10 days ago or more. And so they're going into winter a little smaller. That should be better according to the breeders in Europe where this one was bred. And I don't know how consistent it's going to be, right? Farmers, we need consistency. When you plant a winter crop, you need it to survive most of the time. I don't know if this is going to be that way. We'll see. If it can be, it would be a nice rotation with other fall crops. Moisture on irrigation. So, we're having this question a little bit from some customers. What crops could you cut your water off early and move that water elsewhere, or just being cut off early? Obviously fall crops, but we're a little late for planting that right now. Silage fall crops, take it earlier and get that moved off. Those people may be looking for feed as well if they're short water as well for their crops. A crop like triticale, so that spring trit that maybe has a little bit more of a fibrous root system, can scavenge more moisture. Rye, there's no real spring rye that are available in the marketplace, but more of a fall rye. And lower water use crops like the lentil or chickpea idea, an earlier variety of say a barley. Peas and flax are a little lower, dried beans are a little lower water use. There's some customers that are using stripper headers on irrigation and seeding with a disc drill. You know, they're getting less evaporation in that canopy, cooler soil, so they're retaining a little more moisture. I think they're telling me they're watering less. Something to think about and consider on the crops we can do. You can't do it with all your crops, I know that, but maybe some. And VR irrigation, but you know, will your irrigation district allow, when you ordered water for the 2 days, will the districts eventually come up to speed if you have a VR machine eventually and say, oh, they are irrigating less than than what they normally were using on that 150 acres, so they didn't use as much water as they originally we assumed they did. So, but that's a policy change possibly. But I mean, we have one VR pivot and to adjust irrigation, but that's expensive as well and more complicated again. Got some seed ready to ship, cleaned and ready to go. Some is awaiting some testing yet, and cleaning as we go, cleaning more as we go. Got some early pay discounts on. Blair, what day did we, do I have that written down?
Yeah.
Oh, December 15th for invoicing. Mail's been pretty darn slow. If you do some online banking, you can add us as a payee, just like your power company. You can add stamp seeds in there. Once you get your invoice, you can add us as a payee. And because we've had a lot of checks lost in the mail, super slow, so it has been a challenge on getting mail to us. What else do we have? FCC crop input financing. If you do want to go through FCC for crop input financing, let us know ahead of time, and that way we can put that in the booking information and or set up so that you're connected to your account. I'm planning on doing an Ag Expo event on the Wednesday related to faba beans in the morning, and so we'll look for that information, hoping to have a few different companies come and talk about their program, a little agronomy. I think the acres are going to hopefully be up on that crop type. So, and then of course our late June winter crops tour, hopefully we can have a breeder maybe from Staten Union come over and talk about how they do things in Europe and their thoughts on the fall rye crops. And then our late summer tour crop. We are going to have a planter clinic in early January, so like corn planter, bean planter type of clinic. Blair's hosting that in early January, so there'll be some corn agronomy and planter things to watch for. That cooler, if you book AAC Schrader Durham by December 15th, your name will be in the draw for that cooler, so just for that Durham variety. So what do we have, a couple bookings maybe? So Herman, you're in the running. Oh yeah, so Brian alluded to this. I was in China 10 days ago. Pretty amazing trip. I was there with Alberta Pulse Growers and Pulse Canada, and it was to kind of sign an agreement and kind of reconnect with customers, reconnect with people. Pulse Canada was pretty busy in helping to make sure that the market was working for the vermicelli noodle market there, and then at the initial start of kind of the fractionation market, because that was the other part of what they were taking the starch out and they were left with the protein. And now it's almost like they're doing the protein and now they're left with the starch. They're still using a ton of starch, but but it was a phenomenal opportunity. Learned a lot and traveled from Beijing and then in Zhaoyuan into that area where they've got so some of these end users. This is a robotic forklift that's moving product skids off shelves, in a factory that we toured. Surprisingly, I saw and was able to record and take pictures of more stuff in China at these factories than I was in Manitoba when I toured a protein fractionator there. So learned way more there. They were way more open. Some of these buyers, so this plant that we were at here with these robots, he says they buy 400,000 metric tons of peas a year. I don't know if that's true or not, or maybe that's the peak, but a lot of these buyers are buying 100,000 metric tons of peas. Some of them it's all in containers. So really, really phenomenal to hear from them and hear that what the positive things, but also hear the things they're struggling with, whether it's quality or protein levels or splits or things like that. So, and hopefully as a Canadian industry can find some solutions because they are our biggest customer for peas. But Russian peas are coming in there, and that's they're cheaper. They're $40 to $50 a metric ton cheaper than our peas. Quality's not quite as good as ours, and maybe Terrence is going to talk about this. But that's putting some pressure on our product into the feed market, which is not happening, and then the noodle and fractionation market. That's still a lot of Canadian peas going there, but they are price sensitive. So these noodles, you can buy that package. Actually, I had that in my house. Actually, we toured the plants where they make that, and that bottom right picture is drying of the noodles in before they package it. And right now, you can't send whole faba beans, lentils, chickpeas, or azuki beans. The flours can go to China, but the whole product can't. So it's a phytosanitary issue, and maybe eventually that will be solved in some cases. Maybe it creates some business opportunities to send the flours to China for fractionation, but some of the buyers there are wanting it. So some pull from the inside will help the government move along and approve some of these products, I think. And that's all I have. Next week, there's a Pulse Growers Zone 1 meeting in Taber, December 5th. So if you're interested on more info, you can talk to me after. But yeah, Tuesday in Taber. Any questions on what I kind of covered on my presentation? Excellent. Okay, well, if there is no other questions, we'll have Terrence come up and we'll switch it over. Can you tell us how bad the peas are?